In the late 1990s, we experienced a stock market bubble tied to the internet. Investors badly misjudged the value of companies like Pets.com, but they did accurately predict one thing: the power of the internet to transform industries. Since that stock market bubble, the internet has changed the way people get information, shop, and entertain themselves. The internet has also changed how companies communicate with customers, partners, and their own employees. Companies that figure out how to leverage the internet are being richly rewarded. Apple figured out how to combine hardware, iPhones and iPads, with software, apps and a music player, to serve people's information and entertainment needs. Apple is now the most valuable company in the world, worth more than $500 billion. Facebook, which launched 8 years ago, figured out how to connect people in a social network. And even after what was considered a disastrous IPO, Facebook today is worth $67 billion. Apple and Facebook are, of course, very well-known international success stories. Today we're going to talk with some people from 3 local companies to show how they have significantly grown their organizations using online marketing, e-commerce, cloud computing, and social media. Starting on the far side, our panel today includes Jimmy Mahan, Director of Marketing for Live Oak Bank. Next to him is Michael McWhorter, President of Mojo Music Supply. And closest to me is Robert Preville, the founder of Industry Pigeon. If we could please give our panel a round of applause. I'd like to first give everybody a sense of what these companies do, and I'll have our panelists join in. Live Oak Bank was started in 2007. Instead of focusing on one geographic region, Live Oak focuses on specific industries, starting with veterinarians. The bank uses the internet to keep up with clients and their loans, and to give you a sense of how quickly Live Oak has grown, the nation's 3 largest SBA lenders are, in order, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, and Live Oak Bank. I'd like to start off by having Jimmy explain how they used Google Maps to help convince the FDIC that they are a community bank.
That was really fun, actually. The interesting thing, when we first started out, we focused only on veterinarians, and my grandfather is a veterinarian, an equine vet in just north of Lexington, Kentucky. Worked on Secretariat, actually, before his Triple Crown run. And our family knew vets. We knew their personality and their type was if you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, INTJ. They are going to do it right, they are going to pay their bills, and that is how it is going to be. And the problem is we just had to convince the FDIC that a vet clinic in Wilmington, North Carolina didn't look or act all that different than a vet clinic in Seattle, Washington. And it was easy to do that, especially when we pulled up Google Maps and showed them the vet clinic and went all the way down to the street view in Seattle, Washington, and said, see the front of this vet clinic? It looks exactly like the front of this vet clinic. And you see these apartment buildings behind it? That's their financial base. And then this one's next to an Army base. And we could do this all via Google Maps right in front of them. And it would actually, if you believe the FDIC could be wowed, it wowed them a little bit at that point. Because we had to convince them that even though we're not part of the community, if we knew the psyche of this one industry, we could service it correctly and efficiently without risking the government's money. And it started with Google Maps.
All right. Thank you, Jimmy. In 2000, Michael McWhorter's business partner purchased a music equipment company, thinking he would sell the remaining inventory and be done with it. Then the phone started ringing, and they started to fill new orders. By 2005, the company had about $2 million in sales, and about 10% of those sales were online. Today, the company has more than $5 million in sales, and 60% of those sales are happening online. I'd like Michael to start out by talking a little bit about how they started to make that transition, which I think a lot of people in this room can relate to. You have a traditional business. What are the first few things you started doing to really ramp that up online?
The first thing, and I think the most important, was our internal systems. I think there are a lot of companies out there that start out with QuickBooks and then outgrow QuickBooks. Once you have more than 5 users on the database, it gets pretty slow. And there's not really middle solution software. After QuickBooks, there's the giant Microsoft and bigger platforms. And there wasn't for us really a mid solution that encompassed an accounting back end and a e-commerce front end. There were plenty of great shopping cart programs and there were some great accounting programs, but nothing that bridged the two. So really the beginning for us was we went out and found an open source accounting program and hired an in-house developer to make a shopping cart based on this accounting backend. And really, once we got to just one database, and again, the problem with a lot of people do this, they have a shopping cart front end, or I'm sorry, shopping cart database, and then their accounting database, and they have two different databases. And so if you update a price here in your internal system, you have to update the price online. Same with description, and it quickly becomes a mess. So for us, having one system that we could do everything from the accounting back end to shopping cart front end was really the start of it that got us rolling.
Thank you. In 2004, Robert Preville sat down at his computer and began to write code for a website that became Global Test Supply. His company didn't make anything, but used search engine optimization to resell thousands of test and measurement products that were made by other companies. By 2011, Global Test had more than $5 million in sales and was ranked number 800 on Inc. magazine's list of the fastest growing companies in the country. Robert sold Global Test last year and has since been back at his computer writing code for his next company, Industry Pigeon. Robert, if you could start out by telling us a little bit about how your experience at Global Test led to your new company.
Sure. My first piece of advice to the audience is, if at all possible, don't write code yourself. But it's interesting. It's similar to Mike's challenge of communication internally being fragmented based upon disparate systems. What became obvious to me at Global Test Supply was that we faced the same challenge, not just internally, but with the dozens of vendors in our supply chain that we were buying product from. So the learning lesson there was there's got to be a better way to manage relationships as a distributor in a rather large distribution channel for companies like 3M, Fluke Electronics, FLIR Imaging. So the Industry Pigeon concept came out of this notion of let's connect people that work for different companies and help them facilitate their day-to-day workflow. So I think Rob sort of sums it up best that Facebook is what you use after work. LinkedIn is what you use when you want to find work, and our hope is that Industry Pigeon is what you use once you have work and need to do your job.
All right. Thank you. So let's start out with talking about your sites themselves. I know when I talked beforehand with Michael, he talked a little bit about one of the first lessons was the user interface and just how your website is designed can have a huge effect on how your customers, potential customers, are interacting with it. Why don't you guys, maybe starting with Michael and then the others can jump in, talk a little bit about the lessons you've learned along the way on basic website design, how your site should look and what really made a difference to you and you really saw results from it when you made certain changes.
Well, our biggest problem was we have about 4,000 different parts. So the biggest problem we had was how to display all those parts on the homepage in a way that didn't look like a circus when you got to our homepage. And we figured we had about maybe 10 seconds to grab somebody's attention if they're a first-time visitor to the site. So we went through tons and tons of different variations of menu structures of splitting things up into guitar parts and amp parts and listing everything out. We went through just text lists of all the different menu options or all the different categories to big pictures of each of the different categories. And it really seemed like no matter how we put it out there, it was still just a bunch of stuff, a ton of information. So where we are right now, we looked at there's the 80-20 rule where 20% of your products make up 80% of your sales. So we started looking at search queries, what people were searching for on Google to eventually find us. and we concentrated on those particular categories. So now we have maybe 6 categories at the top of the page, which are our main categories, which are amp kits, guitar parts, guitar amp cabinets. And we focused on those main categories, and underneath all that, you can dig further and get to each of the individual categories. So I think that was a big learning curve for us to figure that out.
Okay. You guys want to jump?
For us, it was simple. As we added verticals to our bank, you said it yourself. Our competition is Wells Fargo and Bank of America and J.P. Morgan, and I don't have socks on. I mean, it's not a fair fight. So we have to compete against that, and we go against those guys every day who have. At one point I was researching it, and Bank of America was spending $118,000 a day on Google AdWords. We can't do that. So it has to be, we have no branches that you can walk into. I mean, this is as dressed up as I've been in months. and we're in T-shirts with dogs running around the bank, and that's kind of who we are. But how do we grab your attention, but also tell that story that is so captivating that when you're looking at a loan at Bank of America as a veterinarian, and then you look at Live Oak Bank, you want to take that next step into our site, or if not into our site, into our YouTube channel, or to our Facebook page, or to our Twitter account. And then once we created that and we had that working streamlined, then we decided to add dentists, and then we decided to add funeral directors, and then we decided to add independent pharmacists. So that sounds like a beginning of a joke, Y'all walk into a bar, right? And so how then do I take what was a website that we designed to be the best damn website for veterinarians ever into the best website for funeral directors, pharmacists, dentists, and veterinarians without now looking like the big bank competitor and so on? And actually, we tore our whole site down and rebuilt it with Taylor Gray here in town, and have added a lot of good tricks to that because they've been fantastic. But once you're a dentist and you come to our site and we've identified that you're a dentist, you won't see much more of the veterinarian information on our site. We'll use different cookies and to lead you down the path that is just pertinent to you. And that was a very important thing that we learned along the way, I would say, in our website, the most important so far.
Okay. Robert?
Yeah, so, I think website design is probably similar to print media design. I tend to follow the philosophy of don't make me think. You have about 3 seconds to communicate to somebody what you want to communicate, but the challenge is they found you, so they already have a pretense in terms of what they're looking for. So you don't really have the luxury of being able to drive their experience the way you do if it was more of a push media feel. The other thing that I tend to believe is Mark Zuckerberg said, getting it done is better than getting it perfect. And website design, interface design, it's an iterative, ongoing process. There's a lot of people say, well, how much is it going to cost to build this website? I said, well, you shouldn't be so much concerned about the upfront cost. How much is it going to cost to continue to build it for the next 10 years? So you put metrics in place. One of the key metrics that we monitored at Global Test Supply was the bounce rate. So what that means is if somebody comes to your website and they leave after one page, most analytics programs would consider that a bounce. So why did they leave? And those are that's you try to get in the psyche of your buyer, or your customer, or your website visitor to figure out, okay, they found you, so there's reason for that, and now let's figure out why they left and figure out how to keep them, either make sure that they're the right visitor. Like the one reason they might have left is because they're not the right visitor. They're looking for, a pediatrician, and they come across a veterinarian website. But if they are a qualified visitor, then maybe there's some internal site design issues. But it's an iterative design process. You always have to study it, measure it, get in the psyche of the person, and then improve from there.
So there's specific things you do. So if you see you've got a high bounce rate on a particular page, on a particular part of your site, take us through your process from there as to what you're likely to do.
I'd like to say it's scientific. It's gut feel. It's intuition. And you can do scientific things. You can like A/B testing, two versions of the same thing, and measure the results on A and B and figure out which works best. And that could have to do with things as simple as a copy that you're using. It could be color schemes. It could be font styles. It could be pictures. But it's a lot of testing. So you have to have a sort of an analytical mindset or hire, if you don't, hire somebody that does to engage in that process.
You guys have, how much do you guys look at the data in terms of bounce rate?
Yeah, we live by it. And one thing that you said that you have to get into the psyche of your users. It's kind of a struggle for us. We have a lot of older users, older guys that collect vintage amps. And so what may be completely obvious to me may be really difficult for somebody else to figure out how it works. And I actually brought my mom in as a tester, and said, "Mom, I want you to go buy a 220K carbon comp resistor, and you need to ship it overnight. This is all over the phone." And so she found tons of bugs. We didn't have a big red button on each page to direct people. My mom's not the most tech savvy lady out there, but she was going through the process. She pointed out tons of things that, okay, well, maybe that's not so obvious to somebody that doesn't, sit in front of a computer all day long or isn't familiar with, drop-down menu structures and stuff like that. So use your mom.
Or a veterinarian.
Or a vet, yeah.
Good. We got a question at table 6. Peggy, we got a microphone coming right behind you.
Okay, I wanted to ask, Jimmy, what specifically did you do to drive people to the different elements of your website?
It's a good question. We first of all, we used my grandfather, a veterinarian who worked on Secretariat. I took a camera, stuck it in front of my grandfather's face, and said, "Tell me the best 5 stories that you've got," and created a YouTube channel around it. And it's really hard for a veterinarian to not watch that. A lot of things. I also started a thing where this was actually a tough to kind of get past the actual bankers at the bank to get this approved. But we visited every vet school in America. I spoke on very basic finance at every vet school. And at the end of every speech, I put our Facebook page behind me, and I said, "We don't have credit cards. We can't do your car loan. We can only do your clinic. So I'm not nothing for you right now. But if you have a question about down the road or just how you should handle your student debt, just talk to me on Facebook. It's me. It's not some guy in a suit in a cubicle somewhere." And that Facebook page blew up, and we had 700 veterinarians following us, still do, and talking with us on the Facebook page. That was a pretty intensive process, obviously that part, but it was a lot of going out and doing the iterative process. That is absolutely key. It's not just, I have a website. It's, all right, what do I do to find out what people are interested in at that time? I did things like an RSS feed. I don't know if you've heard of those, where, I would find what's the best veterinary RSS feed where it's got news that they care about. And if I can take that and put it on our website so it's hitting the right search engine, then I'm starting to draw. And slowly but surely you siphon enough away. And along with the vet school speeches, I wanted to become academic, because all these are doctors that we're dealing with until we got the funeral director. That's after the doctor. But we would do these speeches, and if I could become academic and more than just a bank selling money, that they say, well, we got to go there for the academic view, then I knew the trust would come, and then you get the stories, along with it. I hope that answers it a little bit. It's a lot of little things. The way I look at it is every day I get up, and especially when you're going against Bank of America and Wells Fargo and all these big guys, every day I've got to put sand on the right side of the scale. And someday I put a whole bag on it, someday I put 1 grain on it. But it doesn't matter as long as it eventually tips. So I just got to get up and put sand in. Sometimes it's 2 posts and 1 tweet and whatever, but if it tips, it tips.
You guys, Michael and Robert, you want to take that one too, in terms of driving traffic to your site, especially when you were getting it going?
Yeah, big thing for us was I think it's important to give away some valuable information. We started out doing tech tips and doing tech videos, and got a lot of traffic that way of people wanting to learn how to refret their guitar, or how to polish their frets, or we even put one up on how to restring your guitar the right way. We wrote a lot of tech articles and stuff too. We actually got some of our customers to write tech articles for us. They were big on that. We had a ton of a great response from our customers who wanted just to submit an article to the Mojo website. And I think by doing that, by giving away valuable information, you start to become known as the source for that stuff, and the expert and on what you're talking about. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I think you guys hit on 2 very key components, and that is authority and engagement. And I think that yes, you can pay to drive people to your website. Yes, you can hire somebody to optimize your website, but in order to convert, in order to take the traffic that you're getting and convert that into something meaningful, becoming an authority on your subject matter is absolutely critical. And then engaging this. The older I get, the more I realize how important human relationships are in business. And I came out of engineering school, and for me, everything was very process oriented. Put a process in place, and everything falls in line. The reality is there's people that have to execute this process, and if they don't like you, no matter what the process says, it's probably not going to there's going to be a little friction there. So that's the power of social. The power of social lets you engage one person at one table out there, build a personal relationship. It could be conversational, it could be consultative, but that one conversation will virally spread. And when the subject matter comes up regarding where's the best place to buy a vintage amplifier, where's the best bank to get a loan as a veterinarian, because of that single engagement, these guys are going to come up and surface. So, yes, you can drive traffic online, but how do you convert that and leverage that so that online traffic then drives traffic offline? Because ultimately, what you want to become is a destination. You don't want to be a pit stop in Google's racetrack. You want to be the destination. So instead of going to Google when I'm looking for a bank to loan me money, I go right to Live Oak's website, or I go right to Mojo's website.
Precisely.
Got memories? Get DVDs. Tapes won't last forever. Digital transfers will. Do it today, so you'll have your memories tomorrow. Call us at 399-1820 or online at myrealvideo.com. Mold and time ruin videotapes. Tapes won't last forever. Digital transfers will. Do it today, so you'll have your memories tomorrow. Call us at 399-1820 or online at myrealvideo.com.